Craving your next action-packed adventure? Audible delivers thrills of every kind on your command, like Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, where a lone astronaut must save humanity from extinction, narrated with stunning intensity by Ray Porter. From electrifying suspense and daring quest to spine-tingling horror and romance in far-off realms, unleash your adventurous side with gripping titles that'll keep you guessing. Discover exclusive Audible originals, hotly anticipated new releases, and must-listen bestsellers that hook you from the first minute. Because Audible knows there's no greater thrill than the one that speaks to you. Discover what lies beyond the edge of your seat. Start your free 30-day trial at audible.com/WonderyUS. That's audible.com/WonderyUS.
You're listening to 100 Words or Less with Ray Harkins. Greetings one, greetings all. Welcome to the podcast in which we obsess over the awesome music that is punk, hardcore, metal, indie rock, emo, whatever classification you want to put this in, as long as it comes from DIY spaces, that is what we obsess over. And today, of course, is a discussion with a person who is involved with that. And that person is Matt Karll. He's the vocalist from Philadelphia, hardcore/rap influenced hardcore, I guess we'll call it, band called Gridiron, who's also a huge fan of sports as well. And Matt is a great dude. I was able to meet him last summer, I think, over in the UK, interviewed him for the Outbreak Podcast. And I was like, you know what? I want to have Matt on this form, which is a little more longer form because I only did like 20, 25 minutes with him there. But Gridiron is such an interesting band because, like many unintended projects getting either bigger or attention more than they ever originally anticipated, Gridiron is absolutely one of those things. It was, as many projects happen during the pandemic, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh yeah, I guess we'll play some shows. And then, oh wow, it seems like there are people coming to our shows, and all of this unexpected success that has befallen Gridiron, Matt has handled perfectly, in my opinion. He's been able to ride all of the waves and being able to now navigate themselves into a recording contract because they are putting out their first record. It was just recently announced. The record is called Poetry from Pain. They are going to be releasing that, I want to say early April, if I'm not mistaken, on Blue Grape Music. And it's exciting because it's really cool to watch a band kind of push forward the medium, as it were. This definitely has been something that has been done before, but the way that they're doing it is in a very interesting package. So anyways, that's what we got this week. If it's your first time here, welcome. If it's your 150th time here, even more welcome. Or if you listen to it on a weekly basis, you're insane, which is awesome. And I mean that in a very loving, insane manner. Like, we should obviously be friends if we are not already. Anyways, let's talk about how you can support the show. You can support the show by obviously spreading the word on social media. I know that I probably don't need to tell you that, but you're smart. You know what social media is all about. So, share an episode and tell people that you should listen to this thing. You can also leave a rating and review on the Apple Podcast page, or alternatively, you can leave a rating on the Spotify page. I see those numbers ticking up and it warms my heart. I really appreciate you taking the 20 seconds out of your day to do that because it helps this show get discovered by people who should be listening to it. And also, weekly recommendations. I talk about new records each week that I have discovered, whether they're new, old, everything in between. And then I compile it into a playlist. So if you go to the show notes of this particular show, you'll be able to see a link to a Spotify page or playlist where you will be able to listen to all of the records I recommend. And hopefully it gets you into some new music. Or it doesn't have to be like new music. It can be something that's like, oh wow, I never heard this band, or I never checked it out. Because after all, like, algorithms are cool. Playlists are cool. All of that stuff is good for discovery. But when you have, the human to human connection of like, hey, you should check this out. Someone sits you down and is like, listen to this. You're driving from point A to point B, or, a friend puts you onto something. All of those things are incredibly helpful. And what I personally am passionate about, because that's really the only way that I hear about new music, is, friends and other people who are checking stuff out and being like, emailing me at 100wordspodcast@gmail.com to be like, yo, you need to check this out. And 9 times out of 10, I usually do. So the record I'm talking about this week is a band called This Is Lorelei. I'm not exactly sure how to say it, but the record is incredible. It's called Box for Buddy, Box for Star. If you are into like eccentric indie rock, DIY, sort of bedroom pop, I guess we'll call it, it's not too dissimilar to like what Alex G is doing, except the dude this is a guy named Nate Amos. It's his solo project, and he's been putting out music for years and years and years this is the first like debut release for this moniker, but he also plays in bands that personally I am not familiar with. He's in bands called, what's it called? My Idea, and then Water From Your Eyes. Both of those things I have not checked out. I'm not familiar with, but this record tripped into my headspace, and I love it so much. It's great. It's fun. It's very eccentric. There are certain songs that's like, kind of, indie pop stuff. And there's other songs that are like more, drum machine. Like, it's still poppy. Like all of it definitely has hooks. Lyrics are really funny, but they're also very personal. And I just love this record. I am very excited to hopefully one day, I think he's playing LA in May or something like that. So I'm going to go check it out. But if you like any of that stuff that I just mentioned, you most likely will like this record. And that is also why I like to recommend music like this on an episode with Gridiron, a hardcore band. It's like, expand your palate just a little bit, I like Gridiron just as much as I like This Is Lorelei. These are all things that can exist at the same time. And I wish my 16-year-old or the age that I'm at now, 44 years old, recommending to my 16-year-old self, like, hey, don't be so, weird about your music taste. Like, listen to a lot of stuff. You can care about punk and hardcore in a deep way, but, broaden your horizons. It's very, very helpful. So anyways, let's talk to Matt from Gridiron right now. Like I said, they have a new record that's coming out on Blue Grape in April, if I'm not mistaken. They have the debut single that has dropped recently. They also have vinyl pre-order and all that good stuff that, bands do when they're releasing records. It's very exciting. And selfish plug here, my band, Blood Guilt, that is a new band. We just played 2 shows recently. We have our record for pre-order up on New Age Records. You can find that very easily on the Instagrams or the internets. We pressed up like 500 copies of these things, and there isn't that many left. So I would love your support, and you can check it out on any streaming platform. The actual full EP gets released in early April, and so the pre-order is not going to be around for long. So selfish plug out of the way. Let's talk to Matt from Gridiron. Obviously, the first time that you and I met and spoke was over in the United Kingdom, and I, appreciated your approach to kind of, playing in a band as far as like, for one, and not anticipating anybody to care about what you're doing, but then, and not taking it too seriously, but also like taking it seriously because, clearly like kids that come to your shows, like, they obviously don't want to just like watch you being, complete idiots on stage. And I realize it's kind of a big question right off the rip, but, hardcore as kind of like a form of entertainment, clearly I'm sure you have thoughts about the concept of, the fact like there are bands that exist in the quote unquote serious world. And then obviously bands that are just meant to be a good time and hanging out and everything like that. How do you try to kind of understand the fact that like, yes, Gridiron is simply a hardcore band. We're not like, going to be politicized or anything like that. How do you kind of, I guess, walk through the idea that like, yeah, we're simply a hardcore band and we're totally cool with that?
Yeah, I think both things need to exist. If you have too much of one and not enough of the other, things can get weird or bad or what have you. So, it's very important for me with this band to kind of have a perfect blend of, making sure that we stick to, the roots of hardcore because everyone in the band loves hardcore, but also making it fun. Like it's important, to me and everyone else in the band that this band remains the whole, the reason the band started was, for our friends to have fun too, and, not take ourselves too seriously. It's okay to, kind of be goofy every once in a while.
Yeah, of course. And it's like, I look at it too, where, I mean, like clearly, for lack of a better term, gimmicky joke bands, not saying that Gridiron is a joke band, but obviously like there's an element of that. Like those bands have existed, since whatever, crucial youth in response to youth of today and stuff like that. And so the fact that there needs to be, like to your point, an antidote for anything that, people are taking themselves too seriously when, after all, like we're yelling into microphones, like calm down.
Right. And another thing with this band is like we definitely, have have puns in our lyrics and stuff like that, but everyone in this band, very fortunate to be in a band with them all. They're all just incredible musicians. And I don't think the whole, kind of being goofy every once in a while works. Like if you put out bad music, it doesn't matter, so shout out to all those guys for just continuously writing great music. It makes my life very easy.
Right. Yeah, that's true. It's like people won't even pay attention to a joke if the joke isn't good. And then like the fact that you're like, oh yeah, the music is good, so people, are attracted to that. And then they're like, oh yeah, I like everything else that's attached to the band.
Yeah. We like to say we are the most seriously unserious band.
Right. And like
we take a lot of pride in what we do, but it's okay to have fun doing it, basically, is where we're at.
Absolutely. And I mean, I can reflect on my experience living in Southern California, where it's like a band like Throwdown, like clearly like that nothing was ever meant to be serious with that band, where it was like, their first couple shows, it was like Throwdown dance team with their friends all wearing matching shirts, and people were just like, what is this? But then also it's like, oh yeah, then it's fun. And then, now they like obviously are, like influential to many bands. And it's like, you truly never know what is going to happen with the thing that you start.
Right, exactly. And same thing goes with Gridiron. When this band first started, we were never supposed to play a show. We were never supposed to record anything. It was just me and Will just writing songs for me to rap over during the pandemic, and that was it. Like, so everything that has happened since that has been unexpected. And it's kind of cool because it feels like it's very stress-free. There's not much pressure, and, we're going to continue to do what we want to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Why did, and kind of on that topic, like, I mean, I know you're obviously friends with them and, you guys, play video games together and stuff like that. That's been well documented. But why were you tapped to be the, lead vocalist, as it were? Because, you had the flavor, or what was the vibe?
Well, no, it was just, I've done a lot of like writing and stuff like that. And it was just one of those things I knew, with the pandemic that, a lot of bands weren't really doing much, and Will's one of my best friends. So it was just, hey, you mind writing like 4 songs that I could put some of these lyrics to? And that's kind of how it all started. So.
Okay. That's cool. Yeah. Because I mean, sometimes usually the vocalist of a hardcore band is usually the person who doesn't play an instrument, because it's just like, oh yeah, we like you and we want to hang out with you, but you can't do anything. So how about you just yell?
Right. Yeah, that wasn't the case in this situation. It was just kind of me out of boredom wanting to make music, and, Will and I, put a couple songs together, and then, hit up Mully and Xavier and Lennon now being in the band, and here we are. So pretty cool.
With so I mean, technically this is like your first band, or did you do other, whatever, less serious things before?
Yeah, I did one record with this band Rock Bottom in like 2011. But besides that, recorded a couple demos that like never came out. I wrote a lot of like hip hop that I recorded that never came out. Just kind of sitting on all kinds of different stuff. But this is like easily the most serious, band that I've ever been a part of.
Right. And on that notion as well, like when you first started, I mean, I know because like you mentioned you played shows previously, was it, intimidating when you first started to get up there and kind of like, even if it's, 50 people paying attention to you, did you feel, scared, nervous, or did it come somewhat naturally to you?
I think I got kind of lucky throughout like my whole lineage of doing vocals in bands, because the first band that I was in, Rock Bottom, they already had 2 records out, or a record out, when I joined the band, so it wasn't brand new. So people already knew the words. They were getting really good reactions. So I kind of just like waltzed right into like a band that was already established. And then with Gridiron, the fact that it came out over the pandemic gave people time to kind of listen to it and study it and stuff like that. So all the shows coming, right after the pandemic ended and hardcore kind of came back in its live form, every show was insane. So, the first Gridiron show was ridiculous. And, so I haven't really had to like do the, 10 people in the room kind of thing. I'm kind of lucky in that sense.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's like you definitely have that, built-in experience of what it's like to have people yelling your lyrics back at you. But at the same time, even though, like you said, that there's no pressure for you once that starts to happen, but like there is an element of expectation where it's like, oh, like you're walking into a situation, you better not be too terrible on stage.
Right. I mean, the first one obviously was like pretty nerve-wracking, but also the first show I ever sang in was like a Halloween show. So like all the bands were dressed in costumes, so it was kind of like it was like the perfect show to like ease into singing in a band.
Right, yeah.
And we did like a couple No Warning covers and stuff, like, so it was like kind of a nice, entryway into fronting a band.
Right, yeah. Because it's like you're going to just have more fun with this and not be like, I need to be the most entertaining front person possible. It's like, no, I'm just, I'm gonna sing Suffer Survive. Right. It's fine.
Right. Great record, by the way.
Oh, great. I mean,
no hate over here. I love that record.
No, I mean, it's like, obviously you saw why Linkin Park was like, let's sign these guys. Like, let's go. Putting the focus on you as a person, just because there's, like simple biographical stuff where, correct me if I'm wrong, but you wave the flag of, is it Boyertown, right? That's what you...
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Born and raised there?
Yep. Well, I was born outside of Boyertown, but I moved to Boyertown when I was in like first grade and lived there until I graduated high school. And then I moved like into Philly, for a while.
Okay. Got it. And just because I think anybody that has like played in a band and toured and like played in that general area has the experience of being like, oh, like there's Philly and then there's all of the, townships around, and, every aspect of each township is unique and special, even though they all come together in many respects. What do you think for your experience in your own township? What sets it, either apart or is very similar to the other ones?
It's very small. Like, it's not a large, I mean, there are so many towns in Pennsylvania, and some of these towns have like 8 people in them. So like, it's just, you drive 5 miles, you drive through like 20 different towns or boroughs or what have you. So like Boyertown itself, it wasn't that big. So it's a suburb of Philadelphia. But the town itself is small. There used to be a record shop in Boyertown that used to have hardcore shows, like when I was really, really young, like too young to go to shows. Like I would frequent the record store, but I was never there for hardcore. So, Boyertown does have some sort of history, with hardcore, even with how small it is.
Right. What was the record store?
I
know, here I am putting you on the spot.
Olympic Records, it was called.
Oh, okay. The only one I heard of
like it... All Out War played there and stuff like that. And it's like, had I known then what I know now, but.
I know. It's always, especially when you look at those flyers that, like just predate you by a little bit, where it's like, oh man, if I was like a year older, I could have seen, this band in a basement or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, oh, God,
I mean, the 90s ones are the craziest, where it's like, oh, Hatebreed, Madball, Integrity at the church in Philly. That's just like a normal show,
Totally. They have maybe 100 people there,
Yeah.
Yeah, because the only record store, I mean, there's obviously a lot of record stores in that area, but I remember it's like Siren Records, which I think was in Doylestown, right?
Yeah, that's in Doylestown. Yep.
Got it. What was your, like family structure like growing up? Like mom and dad in the house, brothers and sisters? What did that look like?
My parents split up when I was really young. So I lived with my mom, and then my mom had remarried when I was pretty young. And I had two older brothers, and my two older brothers are definitely the ones responsible for like getting me into hip hop. And then, through hip hop, I kind of found, like bands like Limp Bizkit, where it's kind of like, oh, wow, this is still rap, but like there's instruments in this and it's kind of heavy, and it's, so that's kind of how I like navigated my way through music. But, yeah, my two older brothers when I was younger would just like let me borrow, like whether it be like Wu-Tang Forever CD, that's one that I remember listening to all the time. And, like for my birthdays, I would ask for, rap CDs, and I wasn't allowed to get them. So my brothers were old enough, so they would like sneak them to me. Like I'd always get my birthday presents from my brothers, like away from my mom, which is pretty funny, but
it got you the stuff.
So, yeah. I mean, yeah. So hip hop was very important to me at a very young age.
Do you hear that? Someone's knocking on the door. Oh, that's the delivery from rockabilia.com. You knew that was coming, but I wanted to enter this ad read in a little bit different manner because Rockabilia is one of my favorite places to order merch from. It is all officially licensed. That means the bands get paid, you get high quality merch, and you're supporting independent business. That is awesome. You need to use the promo code 100 words or less, 10% off of your entire order. And I don't care what you're into. If you're into like mainstream metal, new metal, if you're into classic rock, if you're into hip hop, they have it all. And that's what makes Rockabilia such a convenient place to order. They're also based in the Midwest here in the United States. And I just love this company so much. So when that door knocks, you can answer it and be like, oh my gosh, there's my Rockabilia package. I got all these rad shirts and sweatshirts and lunch boxes. I'm not exaggerating. They have 500,000 items. So go there now and use the promo code 100 words or less for 10% off of your entire order. Answer that knock. I love getting into like when the world of, hip hop, punk, hardcore opens itself up to you. And it's that like risky element. You're like, I shouldn't be listening to this. And I only understand maybe like 40% of this, but this is cool. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. You kind of feel, like sneaking, get rich or die trying, into your backpack for the walk to school and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's like, I mean, looking at the West Coast equivalent, when everything was, hitting in the early 90s with, Dre and Snoop, where it's just like, a 13-year-old kid from the suburbs is not like, oh, gin and juice, I know what that is. It's like, no, you've no idea what any of that is.
Yeah.
When you started to, kind of develop your identity, as it were, like when you were going to, junior high, high school and stuff like that, like clearly, like you said, hip hop was already a part of your life and, rock music started to become a part of it. Like, did you care about school? I know you articulated that you played football. What kind of kid were you?
I played sports. I played football and baseball pretty much my whole entire life. So, yeah, sports have always been very, very important to me. And with that, it's like playing sports, I feel like kind of forces you to like at least somewhat try in school, because obviously if you don't do well enough in school, you can't play sports. So like the reason that I tried in school wasn't because I like cared about learning. It was because, so I could play sports basically.
Right. Yeah. It's like, give me a C because I gotta be on the team.
Yep. Yeah. If I was getting 70% on stuff, I was good as long as I could suit up on a Friday.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you could wear. Did you ever have to do the I presume for football you obviously like just dressed up in your jersey. Did you ever have to like do the, shirt and tie for game days?
Away games we would have to do that. Home
Yeah.
games, we would wear the jerseys. Away games, we would wear a shirt and tie.
Yeah. Which I always thought, like, I appreciate, even though as a kid you don't appreciate it, but I was like, in retrospect, you look back and you're just like, oh, it's kind of cool. Like, little sign of respect. Like, yeah, we're taking this seriously.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in sports at a young age that you don't really understand until you get older. And then you realize that, things that you learn while playing sports, really translate to real life, on how to deal with certain situations or talk to people or how to handle stress, stuff like that. So, it's a lot of lessons that you don't realize you're learning at the time, but later in life, you find out they're really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think maybe Gridiron has a future for being like a youth sports advocate. Like you guys can go on the, speaking circuit.
Yeah, we'll sponsor a PAL football team, a Pop Warner squad.
Honestly, you better, because I think nothing would be funnier than like, a local Doylestown, whatever suburb of Philly sports team having like the Gridiron G on their jersey. Like, oh my God.
A team should just let all 5 of us coach one season. We go undefeated. We go undefeated.
And then what's even cooler is that you could obviously bring them on stage where you're just like, guys, this is the, Pop Warner, whatever the league is, like, here's the, the winning team that we coach this year. Oh man, I love this. So what was the ostensible, I guess, life path for you in regards to like, what you were, I mean, maybe you had sports ambitions, like, working in sports or playing in sports, but what was the kind of, trajectory that you were going through?
I mean, I never really thought too far ahead of the, tomorrow when I was at a young age, and then all of a sudden you blink and you're like done with school and it's like, shit, like, I don't know what to do now. So yeah, I didn't really have like, I figured out, in high school that I probably wasn't going to be, make it to the NFL or the MLB, but still I just cared about, the next game or the next, show or whatever, so I never really had like a few like plans of a future until, I got a little bit older.
Got it. And like you were talking about with your trajectory through music, like obviously hip hop and, rap revealed itself to you. And then you started to, put the two together. Not a lot of people do that. They tend to kind of stick in one lane for a longer period of time and then, maybe make a switch or open their prism up a little bit more. I mean, clearly the lineage of, hip hop and hardcore is, it's completely linked. But what spoke to you as you started to kind of like the more, aggressive music that had the hip hop tinge? Like, was it that aggression or was it something else that kind of spoke to you?
Yeah. It was kind of, starting out with like Limp Bizkit. That was the first, like I said, the first like heavy music with rapping on it. So then, once I started discovering hardcore and I found out that there were more bands that sounded like, that didn't sound like that, but did that same thing. Those were the bands that I automatically just gravitated to. Obviously Biohazard is like the most important hardcore band for me. E-Town Concrete, obviously another one. Like, bands like that had like very heavy hip hop influence were the ones that kind of pulled me into hardcore.
Got it. And like you said, I mean, you started to, go to shows, like probably like in the high school age range is where you started to go to more independent shows. Okay.
Yeah.
And how did you feel going to those? Like, I know it was probably, exciting and obviously cool because, I mean, clearly you're still involved, but, what attracted you towards that more, DIY scene as opposed to, your experience maybe prior of obviously going to like concerts?
Definitely like the chaos. I love the chaos. The intimacy of a show like that. When I first started coming around, Doylestown was actually like insane for hardcore shows. Like all the shows at Siren Records or the Moose Lodge had a lot of shows. But at that time, it was like, you were seeing Cold World every weekend. You were seeing Blacklisted every weekend. You were seeing, bands like Mother Mercy, Mongoloids, Bad Seed, all that stuff, so every every show here, even if it was all locals, were all just like insanely sick bands. And every show would have like, 500 to 600 people at them. That was just like a normal show in the, in the burbs for that time period. So, it was very easy to just go to one and be like, well, this is fucking awesome.
This is it.
I don't want to go to concerts anymore. Like, this is, the shit that I'm into.
Yeah. And I love you describing that time because yes, that era was so not only important for your area, but I love it when you can see all of the bands not only influence each other, but then their influence starts to spread out over the whole country where it was just like, looking at all those bands, Balance and Composure, like every single one of those bands like was so important for that scene. And then it all started to ping pong off of each other.
Yeah. I mean, even, Title Fight is obviously a huge one, but it was like, dude, I'd see Title Fight 3 times a month.
Right.
Like it would be weird if you went like a month without seeing them at that, during that time period. Like, one of my favorite shows ever, they played the attic of a barn in Sellersville, PA, which is like kind of close to Doylestown. And it was like one of the craziest shows ever. It was like the ceiling was like super low. So like people were like crowd surfing and getting like wedged in between people's heads in the ceiling. And like, I remember there were so many people packed in the attic of this barn that like you could feel the floor like warping and stuff like that. But so that's one that will stick with me forever. But yeah, just being fortunate enough to see bands like that, so often in that time period is really, really cool. And it's something that during the time you definitely take for granted. And now looking back, it's like, yeah, that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, exactly. But it's only through that, prism. And even if it's like a band doesn't rise to the same level as a Title Fight, it's like being able to see those, small to medium size local bands that are incredibly influential. It's just like, oh yeah, like you could sit there and describe, where it's like, guys, Mother of Mercy was important. And it's just like, no one utters their name really now. And it's like, and no shots against Mother of Mercy, but it's just like, there are certain bands that are very meaningful for a pocket of time and it doesn't diminish their value. But it's just like, yeah, those experiences will be like, yeah, I'm going to be on my deathbed. I'll be like, the barn with Title Fight and all the locals.
The Title Fight Barn show. Yeah. Yeah. There's like a really shitty video of it on YouTube. It's like,
that's amazing.
This is like iPhone 3 era, so the videos weren't too great.
No, absolutely. I mean, the fact that you can like have any documentation of it whatsoever beyond still photos is like, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
And so as you were going to all of this, and like you said, you were, penning lyrics from a just, purely writing standpoint. Did it ever occur to you to want to be in a band prior to, your experience with Rock Bottom? Like, were you trying to start up things, or did you you wanted to express yourself on a more individual basis?
Yeah, it was more of like, I wasn't writing like hardcore lyrics at that time. I was writing rap lyrics. So it was like, I never really had like anything lyrically to like give to a hardcore band at that point in time. So I never really thought about it or like pushed for it or anything like that until it kind of just like fell into my lap basically with Rock Bottom. And I was like, all right, I'll give this a shot. And, that's kind of how it started. I didn't have any aspirations prior to that really to start anything.
Right. Yeah. To be in a band. And that, at least you had the, experience from a just, writing lyrics or just like learning how to express yourself, because it can start as simple as like creative writing in high school or whatever. It's like some people don't even do that. But for you to just be like, oh, yes, here's, a notebook full of lyrics and like, I can't port over to a hardcore band, but at least I've known what it's like to take what's in my head and put it on paper.
Yeah, and I definitely think that's beneficial to kind of have that practice, and at the time when you're doing it, you're not like, oh, this is going to help me down the road. You're just kind of just doing it to do it. Like, it's a way to kind of get your feelings and thoughts out. And, now at this point, I'm really glad that I used to do that, because it's definitely very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. The, I, in running the risk of, looking at Gridiron as like a gimmicky band, because, yes, there's a gimmick, but like clearly there's so much more beyond that, where people will probably instinctually know Gridiron for the next, couple of years as being like, oh yeah, they're the football band or whatever, which is, dismissive in and of itself. But, now that you guys are obviously, quote unquote, taking it more seriously, how are you trying to kind of like skirt that line where it's like, oh yes, like people know us for this, so we're going to continue to do this because that's what we wanted to do from the beginning, versus, completely be like, all right, next record we're going to be singing about baseball, guys, like not saying you're going to do that, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think with this next record, it's still very Gridiron. I just think it's more polished, and the first record, we kind of, made our lane, and, the second record, this next record that's coming out, we know what our lane is, and now let's do it the best we can. And, there's still, every song is a Gridiron song. There's nothing, super crazy, but we also, even on the last record, we've pushed the envelope. So that's something that we're going to continue to do, when we keep making music.
Right. I like that. Yeah. Go ahead and use that metaphor where it's like, all right, you've paved the lane and now you guys are driving down it, and then eventually maybe you can go on an off ramp and then come back to Gridiron or whatever. But it's like, it's all, now that we've paved this, we want to drive on this road for a while.
Right. And the thing with us is, I feel like we never really put ourselves into a corner. Like, we can kind of just make whatever kind of music we want. And ultimately, someone's going to listen to it and be like, oh, it's Gridiron, that checks out.
Right.
Like that,
Yeah.
They would do that, so, I think that's very helpful. But there's a very fine line, doing the type of music that we're doing, that if you cross it, it can come off as like, unauthentic or corny or whatever, so that we're all very, very mindful of that when we're making music.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, that's also why you have Lennon in the band as well. So he could be like, you guys, right. That's way too corny.
Lennon is the old school. Yeah. Yeah. Lennon's the old school authority.
Absolutely. He'd be like, guys, this is way too much like, touch X down. Like this, we can't do this,
Yeah, this doesn't sound enough like H2O. We need to go back to the drawing board.
Absolutely. In watching you, a couple times perform live and just on videos as well, where it's like the, idea of a front person within the context of hardcore is, one thing. And then obviously the, hip hop element that you bring to it, like there's like that front person MC, sort of combination that exists. Like not everybody pulls from both buckets as you kind of do. Was that pretty natural just because you've obviously had kind of an experience with both, or was that something where you're like, oh, I want to lean more on, not like you're like calculating this in your head where it's like, all right, I'm going to bring 60% hardcore, 40% hip hop to my front personness. But was that kind of natural for you to be like, oh yeah, like there'll be a little more of a, swagger in what it is that Gridiron's doing?
I think what I do vocally is the most natural thing personally that I could do. It would feel less authentic if I was up there just screaming. So like I feel like, that was like one of the main things I wanted to do with this band. Like when we decided we were going to put out a record and we were going to play shows, I wanted this to be the most natural version of me lyrically and, how I write and how, I perform and stuff like that. So that was, a big, big priority for me with this band.
Yeah, it makes sense. Because, I mean, truthfully, too, it's like if you were feeling any way about being, uncomfortable or not confident in your presentation, like this falls apart pretty quickly. I mean, I know that you could say that about any art, but like this in particular.
Yeah. I mean, as far as like, being confident, the way that I do vocals for this band is like exactly all I'd ever want to do with a hardcore band.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So I feel pretty confident, when I'm up there and stuff, because it's, I'm not forcing myself to do anything.
Right. Yeah. That would be a weird vibe if you did.
Yeah.
Oh, what's up, person who's perpetually on the internet? Wait, you have not heard about evilgreed.net? Yes, you need to visit websites. I know it's super fun just to hang out on social media platforms, but trust me, when you go to evilgreed.net, you will get dialed into one of the best places that you can purchase bands of a certain genre of music. And that's obviously like punk, hardcore, artistic, heavy stuff. But they have exclusive pieces of vinyl. They got merch up the wazoo. And what makes them cool is they have a very specific point of view. Like they don't let the doors open for any band to kind of walk in there and sell their stuff. They work with only a specific set of bands. And I'm going to give you some of them now. Do you like Speed? You like Knocked Loose? Or how about you like labels like Triple B or Sargent House? You get it. If you're listening to this show, you are most likely going to love at least 95% of what they're selling on there. They're based in Berlin, Germany, but do not let that scare you here in the United States. Their stuff gets to you very quickly and very cost effectively. Trust me in saying that I've ordered from them on more than one occasion, and I am so satisfied with what they have to offer that's why I'm talking to you about it. So please go to evilgreed.net and, maybe get off social media for a moment, and then you can buy some stuff and you will be thrilled with the offerings they have. So evilgreed.net, go shopping now. So when you started to, kind of bring this music home and obviously, not even particularly Gridiron, but like going to shows and, like getting tattoos and like all the things that, we do as hardcore kids. How was your mom, or, your other peers, like, your sports team members and everything being like, yo, what's Matt into? Like, I sort of understand it, but like, this is kind of weird. Or were they just like, all right, that's Matt's thing. Like, as long as he shows up to practice on, Saturday morning or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I was still very much into hip hop, and obviously, at that age, everyone's into hip hop. So that was like the common ground, between me and teammates or whatever. But like, I also had teammates, we had like, this is back CD player days. We had a CD player in the locker room, and one of the mixes that we would listen to before games had Hatebreed on it. Had I Will Be Heard on it. So it's, and all these kids on my team are listening to this with me, and they have no idea what it is. They have no idea that they have other songs or that, Satisfaction is like one of the greatest heavy music records ever. But that song was just there playing. Everyone heard it, and even then at that point, when I heard it in the locker room, I wasn't like, wow, this is awesome, I need to find more of this. I was like, could we like turn this off and put like Lil Wayne on or something, so.
Right. What, on that same tip, like what did was your mom concerned about what you were getting into since, she was like, oh, I don't want you listening to hip hop because your brothers are sneaking this in the back door?
No, not really. My mom was always, she was kind of one of those parents that let me do whatever I wanted to do. And if I had a problem, it wasn't, well, let me fix your problem. It was figure it out, so I think that's kind of, gave me the freedom to discover things that I wanted to discover, find things I liked, find things I didn't like, etc.
That's cool. So yeah, as long as you were like living up to your end of the bargain in regards to, not being like a complete delinquent, then right. Your mom would be like,
as long as I was like at least somewhat regular, she didn't care,
Right. You were showed up to school, you cared about sports, like, like you were showing some signs of responsibility, which is good. Yeah. The unexpectedness of this band, I mean, you've articulated, you've spoken about it, and it's been well documented. But how, like, is the feeling of excitement from, you and obviously the rest of the band, that the fact that, like, I mean, we're dating ourselves, but, you just came out to LA and played a, pretty sick show out here. And then, the fact that there's, momentum. People are like caring about what you're releasing next. Not like you are shifting the way that you're thinking about how you're creating music, but, the weight of expectations, is a real thing. And like, how are you kind of like trying to combine that excitement without also, letting what you're doing be dictated by the fact that people care about what you're doing now,
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If people like the stuff before, as long as we stay true to ourselves and do what we want to do, everyone in this band is extremely creative and extremely good at their craft, and the biggest thing about this band is I think we are all very self-aware. Lennon being the most self-aware, obviously.
Sure.
But
obviously. Yeah.
But it's really surreal. And it's a really, really cool feeling just having people give a shit, and that is, very, very motivating to all of us, to keep pushing the envelope and, raising the bar for ourselves musically. And, I feel like we definitely did that on this next record that's coming out. So I, hope everyone rocks with it.
Yeah. You're like, you're like, we like it. So hopefully some people show up with it. Yeah.
I mean, that's all that matters at the end of the day. As long as you're proud of what you put out, if anyone else likes it or, cares about it, that's just a bonus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And especially too, and this will kind of dovetail into the next question where it's like with the, the way that people can consume music now, it's so ubiquitous. It doesn't matter. Like, people can like the most irrelevant hardcore bands from like the 90s and like, worship at their altar. And then, whatever, in 10 or 20 years, people can revisit Gridiron and just be like, can you guys believe this? Like, they're way better than 10-Yard Fight or whatever, the thing that I find cool about you guys beyond, how you exist as a band is like you are very focused on your region and your regionality. Like, the internet has flattened every band to be like, I don't know where they're from unless they like explicitly say it. Was that important for you from like the get-go where it's like people need to know that we're a Pennsylvania hardcore band?
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
Pennsylvania hardcore is just like, even dating back to the early 90s with bands like Crutch and Strength for a Reason. And there's just been so much good stuff to come out of Pennsylvania over the past 30 years, that it's important to me being a current band to make sure that these, the younger kids that are getting in the hardcore now, understand and find out and discover these bands, because without those bands, like without Crutch, there'd be no Gridiron, so it's very, very important to me, to make sure that, that torch stays lit. And, Philadelphia is the best city in the country and it's not even close. So,
right.
I will always represent Philadelphia because it is the single greatest place on earth.
Right. and it's through that where people are able to not only place bands in their proper context, but like, I think it's important for bands to plant their flag because it's like the moment, and many of our friends have done this where it's like, once a band reaches a certain level of, success, it's like they're, none of the members live in the same city, which that's totally fine and reasonable. But then it's like, if a band hasn't planted a particular flag of being like, I don't even know where this band is from, which, isn't that important, but at the same time, it's like, it's also important to wave your flag as well.
Yeah, it is. And, a lot of times where you're from shapes who you are, and, how you act and how you handle things and how you talk and your attitude and, point of view. So I think all those things are very important, if where you live has had a positive impact on you to represent it.
Yep, absolutely. This is kind of a stupid question, but something that I've thought about not only with you guys, but just other bands that have existed in the, sports related environment where I'm like, I don't understand why really we haven't gotten a lot of bands that are inspired. I mean, yes, there's maybe songs about basketball or baseball, but like, we really haven't had a band that's been like, all right, we're, I mean, I was about to say we're Free Throw, which is like an emo band, but that's, beside the point. But I'm like, why haven't we had more NBA or baseball filled bands? So yeah, I don't know. Do you have a theory on that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, a lot of my stress and anger and pain comes from Philadelphia sports. So why not use that and channel that into music?
Right.
Every some people, video games piss them off, or, chess pisses them off. Well, sports piss me off. So that's normally, a good motivator to write pissed off lyrics.
Sure. Well, then you can easily pull on the Philadelphia 76ers for your next record,
Yeah, let's yeah.
And you just call it Trust the Process. That's all you need to do. It's fine.
We're playing in the Super Bowl on Sunday. I'll worry about the Sixers next Monday. Next Monday we can talk basketball. No basketball talk for now.
Totally. You're like, one thing at a time, all right? With the kind of talking about the sort of regionality, like once you started to, travel outside of, your ecosystem and play shows in different places and notice the distinct differences between, scenes and towns and that sort of stuff. What was, it doesn't have to be like, good, bad, or in between, but what were some of the differences that you noticed where it's just like, oh, so this is like what the West Coast is versus the East Coast? Or other places that you noticed there was a distinct difference?
Yeah, I mean, I think with bands from different regions, obviously they pull from local bands or bands from their area that existed in the past. So musically, I think every region kind of has its own unique sound. New York hardcore bands sound like New York hardcore bands. PA hardcore bands sound like PA hardcore bands. California, same thing, and they all have their own little like things that they do, in each region that makes them them. And I think that's really cool. And another one thing I do a lot, I find myself doing, is when I travel somewhere new, I will like find things that remind me of here. So like, I feel like I rank cities based on like how much like Philadelphia they are, which is probably like not the best way to rank a city, and that's why like I love Detroit. Detroit, like very, very similar vibes, to Philly. They're a little less like pissed off all the time. Like me and Will, like I'll just, someone will cut me off and it'll just like send me into a blinding rage. And, Will is my check and balance with stuff like that. Sometimes he's like, you don't have to get that upset about it, so it's good to have that. But, we were just in California last weekend. California is amazing. It's totally unlike Philadelphia. But just the culture out there is really, really cool. And that's another thing that's important to me, is like if a city, has culture. And, obviously with the unfortunate stuff that's going on in California right now with the fires and stuff, you're really seeing, a lot of people pull together, in hardcore, outside of hardcore. And that just goes to show, like, the culture of a city, it's really on display when something like this happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, you're totally right. And I think I like how it's certain cities, to your point, either have a chip on their shoulder, a personality, like something makes it uniquely them. And like, I mean, the Detroit Philadelphia connection is totally, because like, yeah, those cities perpetually are just always like, obviously we're the best, you idiots. It's Detroit versus everybody or whatever.
Yeah. Just the blue collar, Detroit. Totally. And that's why I love going to Detroit, because I'm like, I feel like I'm kind of in Philadelphia. Even like going down the highway going into Detroit, there's like oil refineries and stuff, and it's literally the same exact thing here in Philly. So it's just like you feel like you're home.
Totally. Yeah, you're just like, I'm expecting to see a Wawa right around the corner, but I know I'm not going to because it's not there. But yeah. But yeah,
they got Jets though, so shout out to Jets Pizza.
Jets Pizza, yeah. And if you don't have an opinion about either your pizza and or your convenience stores, like you really haven't experienced your city.
Yeah, I mean Wawa is the greatest thing to exist in the United States. I wouldn't trade it. someone could bring me In-N-Out and say, you have to take all these Wawas away and we'll replace everyone with an In-N-Out, and it would be no.
No,
Because
hard.
Wawa across the board, the menu is unreal. The food isn't the best food in the world. I'm well aware of that. But the thing about Wawa is it's open 24/7, 365. It's always there for you. So
Yep.
whenever you're hungry and you don't feel like cooking, you don't have to check and see if it's open, because it's open and they're going to give you whatever you order on that little touchscreen menu. So that's
Of
why
course.
Wawa is the greatest.
Right. Did you ever work at a Wawa?
No, I've never worked at a Wawa.
Okay. Yeah. Just because some people do have those like real, like, I mean, using In-N-Out as an example, where it's like In-N-Out employees are like lifers. These are people who like start working there at 16 and then they're like 45 and they're like, yeah, I've worked here for 30 years. It's like,
Yeah.
Really? Wow. Yeah.
I mean, that's an ode to, it's a good company, obviously, if they're keeping employees that long. But
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. What was it? Speaking of which, what was your first job?
my first job, I was 13 when I got my first job, which is not legal. But I would go to this place in Boyertown called Mario's Pizza, and I would fold pizza boxes for like 2 hours, and they'd give me $20. And I would take that $20, and there was a hobby shop in Boyertown. I would walk to the pizza place to work, and I'd walk home, and I would never go home with the $20. I would stop and buy like football cards or baseball cards every single day. So I just worked. So basically, I just worked for sports cards.
Sure. Yeah.
But that was, I was 13. I didn't have a phone bill or anything. What else was I going to spend it on?
Right. Yeah. So I could be like, you know what I'm starting? I'm starting a 401k with this $20.
Right. Yeah. I wasn't buying Bitcoin,
No.
Like so.
Well, and plus, like sports cards at that particular time, like, people can argue they're an investment, and it's like, like there's some truth to that. I mean, some of them are pretty worthless now, but that's okay.
Yeah. It's great. Like the current cards are worth way more than the cards like from the 90s and 2000s and stuff like that. Because the sports card companies caught on to the game, and if you make a 1-of-1 card, with a Ohtani jersey patch on it, or or something like that, you're getting six figures for it.
Totally.
So they know what they're doing.
Yeah, I know. After they learned from their mistakes of like because I'm older than you and I collected. Yeah, it's like they mass produced them.
Everything. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's like I look at my Ken Griffey Jr. rookie card, upper deck, and I'm like, I remember when this was valuable. It's like, Oh God, no, it's not at all. Do you still have all your sports cards?
I have some of them. I have a lot of my Philly sports cards I've held on to.
Sure, that makes sense. Yeah,
but a lot of the other ones I've gotten rid of over time.
Right. Yeah, because it comes, it either becomes a burden to continue to move them around, or it's just, they're worthless, and you're like, why am I keeping this now?
Exactly.
Yeah,
but it sucks because like now you look back and it's like, well, did I have one in there that's worth anything? Even with like when I was younger than that, like when I fucked with Pokemon, like I had a Charizard back in the day. I was like one of the like only like one of 3 at recess that had this card. No idea where it is now, but now they're worth thousands of dollars. But hindsight's always 20/20.
Of course. Now you get an Instagram reels to you with a kid doing an unboxing, and you're like, dude, those were the cards that I had.
Yeah.
Last 2 things I want to hit on was the you are a lover of collectibles in general, and obviously vintage is an important part of who you are and your passion from that side of things. Just as a observer of the culture and how that's kind of vintage is such a interesting spot now, where it's like a Chrome Mag shirt could be like $1,000, just like a pair of Chrome Hearts jeans. A 13-year-old's going to be like, I'm going to pay $2,000 for that, but they don't even like know why they want that. They just see it on Instagram or whatever.
Right. They see the crosses and they're like, I need that.
Totally.
I fall victim to that shit too. So
we are all not above it, and this definitely doesn't come from a place of criticism. But as an observer of that culture, is it interesting for you to kind of observe the ebbs and flows of it, to be like, wow, like, it's at the biggest spot it's ever been, or like, oh, I wish it kind of got, receded back a little bit. So, I'd be able to like cop some sneakers for a normal price.
Yeah, it's just funny to see, when you're involved in it for so long, just like the waves, the trends, it's just like anything else. You know, 12 years ago, 15 years ago, like people were killing each other for Jordans and now they're just sitting at outlets. It's just, but then, 10 years from now, Jordans will be the hot shit again. And, everything just kind of is a wave.
Yeah.
Especially with, sneakers and clothing and fashion, what have you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't think at any point in the 90s would people, especially kids going to hardcore shows, would be like, what's going to come back? Like Jinkos, huge jeans. People are like, no, that's a relic.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's not.
Now people are rocking Jinkos again. Not my style, but I respect it, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. I never felt that. I only had one pair of Jinkos myself, and it was not the jeans. It was like I thought I was edgy by having like the khaki Jinkos, where I was like, yo, this is not the jean version. That's like, it still is Jinko.
I had a pair of khaki Jinkos when I was a kid too.
Dude, we're feeling it, man.
Khaki Jinkos. I had the dude with like his head was like a flame. Yeah. Another pair of pants that my brothers used to rock that I always wanted were called caffeines. They were like raver pants. Oh. And they had like the things that like hung out the side. And you used to get them and they used to be like scented when you'd buy them. Like they'd smell like mint or like banana.
Oh, but like, I never knew the scented.
Caffeines. Yeah. Or no, I'm sorry, not caffeine, UFOs.
Oh, okay.
Caffeine was another. Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. I never knew the scented pant thing was in the market for the, rave culture.
Yeah, and then obviously like I don't expect that scent to like last after one wash, but they smelled good coming out the store.
Totally. You're just like, yo, take a hit of this. It's like, oh man, it's like a banana Laffy Taffy. That's incredible. Well, the last thing that the fact that touring has obviously become more of your experience now, where you're going out longer, and I mean, when I say longer, like you're going out more. What has your experience been with touring, broadly speaking? Like, I know that you probably like elements of it, and there's other elements of like, oh man, it's I kind of miss home or whatever. How's your perspective shifting on that?
I mean, ultimately, I'm a pretty big homebody. I love chilling at home, with my fiance, my cats. So leaving kind of sucks. It's something that, obviously, like if we start touring more, it's just something that I will, I'll have to get accustomed to. I've never really done anything super long. We did Europe, which was about 2 weeks. And I mean, that was like one of the best stretches of time in my life. Like that just, it's cool doing anything with your best friends, but like being able to do something like that with all your best friends is really, really a surreal experience.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I mean, especially when you are being like we're playing in countries that, people like English is their second language, and they've taken the time to memorize, my silly lyrics or whatever. It's just like, this is weird, but awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, having people in Mönchengladbach, Germany scream Boyertown is pretty funny, pretty cool.
Absolutely. You're like, this was not on anybody's bingo card ever, but now it is. And this is great.
No. Yeah.
Well, Matt, I very much appreciate you hanging out with me. Thanks for doing this and chopping it up, and go Birds, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you for having me on. And yes, those are the big words right now. Go Birds.
Absolutely. And I'm not going to edit. Yeah, I'm not going to edit this out.
Yeah, I will either be very, very happy in a few days, or you might want to shoot me a message and check up on me.
Right. I'll be like, did you are you guys ungrease the poles? Like, is this okay? But yeah, no, we'll be okay.
If they win.
Yes.
Yeah. If they win, you don't have to hit me up.
I know you'll
know. I'll be good if they win.
Yep. There we go. Matt, thank you very much for hanging out. And I'm very excited because we obviously recorded this before the Super Bowl happened. And Matt is a happy camper because he is a huge Philadelphia Eagles fan. And they, for those that care about the football sports aspect of it, which clearly, if you like Gridiron, you most likely care about sports in some capacity. Philadelphia Eagles won, so Matt did not need to be depressed for the next 6 or 7 months. So anyways, next week on the show, I have an old friend. His name is Patrick Piccolo. I originally met him many years ago when he played in a band called Embrace the End. Awesome metalcore band from the early 2000s, mid 2000s, we'll call it. He is a sign painter up in Oakland. He has a whole new life and discipline in regards to what he is doing. But on top of all that, he plays in a sick new band called Caged View, who's releasing a new LP imminently. And I was excited to have him on because I got pitched this idea and I was like, you don't need to pitch me. I love Patrick. And I was able to figure that out with him. And so that's what we got next week. So if you are a fan of the mid 2000s metalcore or the discipline of sign painting, which that's a whole story in and of itself, which we obviously get into. Anyways, that's what we got next week. Patrick Piccolo from Caged View and Embrace the End, and a sign painter extraordinaire. That's what we got. Until then, be safe, everybody.
Are you looking for a new job or want a career change? Look no further than Monster.com. Need a little help standing out? Our expert resume writing services will make sure you shine. Want to brush up on your interview skills? Engage with our AI interview prep tool. Want some advice on negotiating your new salary? Visit our salary tools and extensive library of career advice articles, and you'll have all the tips and tricks you'll need to succeed. Visit Monster.com today and take the first step towards your career. Monster.com. Find your right job fit.